Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome within the Higher Council for Education, Training and Scientific Research. We are really pleased and delighted to host this workshop for reflection on issues of digital transformation of education in Morocco. And without further ado, I'll give the floor to our professor, Habib Malki, the president of the CSEFRS.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers amis,
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to wish you a warm welcome on this seminar on digital transformation in the field of education. This issue that is of utmost importance for our future development of our education system and training. I would like to thank our partners from UNESCO in Rabat for their participation, the active one, in the organization and the animation of this seminar. People in charge of the representation of UNESCO in Rabat spared no effort in order to bring all the necessary support for the success of this these procedures. I would like to thank as well the professors, the scholars, the researchers and practitioners in the field of education, and also the representatives of ministerial departments who responded to our invitation in order to contribute to this reflection within the Higher Council for Education, Training and Scientific Research concerning the theme of digital transformation in education in this era of deep development and technological mutations. The Council is facing so many challenges, but these digital transformations allow for so many opportunities. We will be reflecting, brainstorming in order to better understand and seize the potential of the digital sphere in our educational system. Our objective today is to think together how we can integrate the digital aspects in our pedagogical practice in a sustainable, ethical and inclusive manner. We need to think beyond temporary solutions and to build an education for tomorrow that will be innovative and also equitable. The digital gives us so many possibilities in order to enrich the pedagogical content, to customize the learning way, and also to develop skills for the 21st century for learners and teachers alike concerning the contribution of the digital system. Morocco took so many initiatives in order to develop a base that is very promising in order to leverage the digital aspects, and by including them in the educational process, these initiatives have to do with the development of technological infrastructure in order to allow a better access to the digital world through the extension of mobile networks and also to use optic fiber. And meeting specific needs in the educational system, Morocco has also launched for more than 2 decades the Genius program in order to enhance the use of information and communication in public schools by giving them the necessary tools and material and equipment, and also to ensure being linked to grids of internet, and there were so many other efforts in order to enhance digital skills of teachers and pedagogical staff by launching specific training in partnership with the international organizations in this regard. All those actions have been, moreover, supported by developing digital and technological resources adapted to a national curricula according to the Moroccan context. We need to highlight that although we are making so many efforts, the dynamic of digital transformation in the field of education is in crossroads and has so many deficits and is facing so many challenges for learners and also for faculty and educational institutions. The first challenge has to do with accessibility and the imperative of reducing the digital bill and cost. And the success in this regard requires that all learners have a generalized access to all tools and equipment and digital resources, and the reduction of disparities between the different categories of beneficiaries. This requires equally the availability of infrastructure that is performant, allowing for connectivity in order to ensure wide scale up of the use of the digital world. And the second bit has to do with training and the development of digital skills, and the efficiency of the transformative dynamic is highly reliant on teachers who need to be initiated to the digital tools in order to understand how to integrate them in the pedagogical practice, and also to adapt to the new methods of teaching. Reveals to be necessary in order to ensure the transition from the traditional education to the digital pedagogy that involves the techniques of modulable and collaborative and autonomous learning methods. And the digital transformation also is contingent on the quality of the pedagogical content that needs to be deployed, and also on the degree of adaptability to the need and its relevance for learners. We are relying on an innovative approach, and it is needed more than ever in order to adapt those resources to the social and cultural and economic context in order to better meet the need of our educational system. Always within the same vein, the content, digital content, needs to be interactive, engaging, and upgraded in order to keep up with the evolutions, especially in the technological field. Similarly, we need to focus on the degree of the involvement of learners who will be affected in high degrees in environments of virtual learning. And digital transformation can impact the social dynamic and the personal skills between students, and we need to find some balance between online learning and in-person learning in order to preserve the social and emotional aspects of education. Ladies and gentlemen, given these opportunities and also the stakes that stem from this change, we have high ambition for our educational system, because this is an essential project in order to prepare the next generations to face the challenges of the future. This change in education seems today well defined. We are to build an educational system that is modern, equitable, and efficient. And all those ambitions need to rely on an inclusive approach in which all stakeholders work together hand in hand in order to ensure this development. And also we need to invest in digital infrastructure and connectivity and the training of educators in terms of this transition, and to adapt the content. As we noticed, the digital transformation in education is a process that is multi-dimensional, and it is costly. And the implementation of a digital infrastructure that is sustainable and equitable in Morocco requires the mobilization of resources, financial ones, especially important ones, all along the chain. And it needs to be backed by a financing strategy well adapted that includes all the stakeholders and parties, and through collaboration between the private and public sector. This should be a project that lives up to the ambitions of Morocco in order to prepare the youth of today to the challenges of tomorrow, especially that we are living in a digital revolution, and we need to bridge the gap in this regard. We need to optimize all steps of this process and to ensure a sustainable financing This way, Morocco will be able to ensure this educational transformation and to have a real lever at the social and economic levels. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. In the same regard, we will listen to Stephanie Giannin, the Under Secretary General of Education at UNESCO. She has recorded her speech, her address, and will be asking for the attainment. Dear President, dear partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure to attend in this strategic workshop, and I would like to thank the Higher Council for Education, Training and Scientific Research. And also, I'd like to thank the President Habib Malki for their involvement with us today. You have the opportunity to think on the digital transformation in education, and it is essential for the ecosystem for us all, as you all know, and also for the sustainable development in 2022. The UN summit on the education transformation gathered 145 member states in order to think about this world in constant change, in order to relaunch the commitment of all the education community and to have the same mission and strategic objectives. In September 2024, this year, a new case, or rather, we adopted in New York during the summit of the UN on the future. This pact reflects technology as a key tool for an inclusive future, and also there was a warning against the gaps, and in this dynamic and vein and this impetus, the Regional Bureau of UNESCO in Maghreb has a study on digital transformation on 100 countries of the region, and for ensuring digital transformation, we have digital transformation collaborative, and we had more than 40 partners in agencies like UNICEF, USAID, and EFC, and other partners, and also businesses of technology accompanied all those partners and those alliances, new ones. They are with us on board with UNESCO in this collective and collaborative effort. So there will be a report that will be launched in Morocco and also in other countries of the Maghreb, and UNESCO remains with a heeding call, especially when it comes to the financing of education and the digital transformation of education, that are priorities, they are pillars, and there are roadmaps to be developed by the end of next year, when we will hold the World Summit on social transformation. Morocco, Digital Morocco 2030, that highlights on human capital, shows us the way. Ladies and gentlemen, dear partners, dear friends, this workshop, I think, is crucial in order to be a starting point, in order to set the basis and foundations of a modern, inclusive educational system that will be up to the challenges of tomorrow. And I invite you to share your ideas, to explore with us innovative solutions in order to embody this vision and translate it to reality. I wish you productive discussions, and we are here to support you and to work with you in the coming months. On your behalf, I'm thanking Stefania Giannini, and now I give the floor to a preliminary introductory address on digital transformation to Mr. Aziz Chouh, the Secretary General of the Council. Greetings, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a warm welcome here in this council for attending this workshop on digital transformation in the educational system. And I'll be just presenting the landscape in our country since a few years, because this dimension has to do with education, as it was mentioned in the chairman's introduction. And this dates back to 2 decades in Morocco, starting from the 90s. Morocco has had the national charter of the educational system reform that started in terms of implementation in 2000, and then we were talking about the digital aspect of education, and a few years later, starting from 2008, we had a wonderful program to launch the reform that we called, in terms of marketing terms, the emergency plan. And the third phase, and that is very important, is the strategic vision that was launched in 2015, and that tackled the digital aspect of education. And today we'll be talking about the current state of affairs today, what we have in terms of plans, actions, and also we will be talking about a few determinant milestones for the future. The Charter is a document, a referential document, very important, that addressed all the dimensions of the educational system based on so many levers in terms of elaboration. The 10th lever was dedicated to this aspect of digital transformation in education, and back then the terms that were used, the new technologies of information and communication. This lever had wished or called for all the stakeholders at the national level to address this issue in order to determine the difficulty of distancing a certain number of students and teachers, and we were tackling equity in terms of education based on technological means. But also we were exploring so many measures in terms and provisions in terms of resources to the maximum level of the actors of the educational system. This 10th lever submitted a recommendation in order to connect all educational systems or institutions to the system and to the grid that existed back then in the late 90s. And the Charter asks for all the stakeholders to integrate technology in a gradual and progressive manner that includes all the dimensions of the educational issue. The 11th lever raised the issue of excellency and the innovation and scientific research, and according to which all universities and research laboratories needed to be connected as much as possible with the rest of the ecosystem and the world in order to have access to all scientific research references and documentation. And in 2008, it was the period of the implementation of this charter on several dimensions, but particularly, as it was mentioned by Mr. President, in 2005, Morocco had a very solid program. It was rich, important, with a budget that was financed by the Universal Service Fund, that was the fruit of contributions of telecom operators in order to help remote areas that did not have access to technology, because there was a disparity between rural and urban areas. Just to precise it, back then our president was the Minister of Education and Higher Education, and it was part of his responsibilities to work on this program. And this had 3 main pillars. The first one is the integration of communication technologies at the very heart of education. And this was a cross-cutting edge and the enhancing of the quality of teaching through an efficient use of tools, technological tools by teachers and professors and students. And the third one, the adaptation of curricula to the introduction of information and IT tools, technological tools, in order to bring those students to this new world, technological one. Between 2006 and 2007, 28,000 laptops were used in more than 2,000 institutions, and we had 2,000 multimedia rooms throughout the country. And this represents one laptop or computer for 52 students. In 2008, we achieved the rate of one computer for 35 students, and this is an honorable ratio. In 2008, the rate of equipment in IT posts in central services was up to 45%. When we talk about central services, this is at the very heart of the chain of planning, of the human resources management, financial management, etc. In 2008, for higher education, we had 50% at the central level, and here statistics were not available back then. And in 2008, as I mentioned, we had the emergency plan that relaunched the work on reform. And we had so many dimensions that were included in the program. And we focused on the implementation of an IT system for the management of the educational system. And today we have Massar system, statistics system, planning system, higher council, and training, vocational training. So we had IT that touched upon all those dimensions. And we had so many important milestones in our educational system. Now I come to the strategic vision that was elaborated in 2015 by the Higher Council. This was the fruit of an exchange with all stakeholders and also with a benchmarking with several educational systems in other countries. And this work or this referential document was based on 23 levers. Lever 12 was based on the digital, and 19 equally, through the strengthening of the integration of technology in order to enhance the quality of learning. You see how discourse and the narrative started changing, because at the very beginning we were having the hard vision, focusing on infrastructure, but then we started focusing on the qualitative aspect pertaining to the content, training, soft skills, learning techniques, etc. Always concerning the strategic vision, the 20th lever, it is very important in this regard, the active involvement of the economy and the society of knowledge. And here we had the digital aspect that was omnipresent, and Morocco launched in 2012, 2013, a very big digital strategy, and education was part of it, was on board in all those dimensions, touching upon students and professors alike. Today, in 2024, equally, as you all know, all the ministerial departments have a program of action, an action plan, and it is coined differently from a ministry to another. In the Ministry of Education has a roadmap 2022-2026 on the integration of digital resources, the educational system through so many actions. And here we'll be focused on 4 main actions, but basically these are the main pillars of this roadmap within the ministry. Concerning higher education, also for those who know the sector, there is the first lever that has to do with digital transformation through all what is administrative, curriculum, programs, lessons, but also even online teaching platforms. And today in several universities we have platforms of language learning that are very interactive and accessible for students. And concerning the higher council, we gathered opinions and advices that were elaborated by the council since 2008 up to date. We have almost 15 opinions. I will not be talking about them all, but at the higher council, all the members of the commissions and stakeholders were well aware of the issue since 2007, when the council was launched up to date, and we have so many opinions, and we had opinions that were shared with the government on the a bill and the law bill that had to do with several dimensions, especially concerning curriculum and teachers training, and also the capacity building of all the actors, students, professors, and managers alike. Today, if you allow me, the debate on the digital world has been triggered again by so many novelties, as you may have noticed in the sector. We distinguish between two aspects, learning and management. Concerning learning, we have so many solutions, and as you all know, the e-learning, collaborative platforms, distance learning, hybrid way, and platforms based on and also augmented reality and digital reality. And today, all those pieces make our world, the digital world, and all these converge to a new type of teaching that is more interactive, more customized for the students and the learner. And in all fields, also for vocational training, for the professional aspects, and all the evaluation and assessment systems are being digitalized and interactive. On the other hand, concerning management, we have so many major evolutions that are marking all the stakeholders in the technological world, but most importantly, we are gradually facing a huge big data. And here we are talking about students, management, and to the whole ecosystem of education and of schools. And this big data today, or metadata data as well, we have so many tools for using it and exploiting it. But we also have Morocco this year moved forward for digitalizing the baccalaureate, the degree of high school, and we are providing certificates and diplomas, and we will be providing them in a digital way, and we need to secure all the ecosystem which will trigger today or give birth, because today we have pieces of the puzzles that are being different and away. We have the higher council that has its own management system, and the vocational train that has its own training, or rather management system. So today we're trying to mutualize efforts and to have an integrated way of platforms and systems that will be accessible and less costly if compared to the previous years. And equally important, there are so many risks and challenges that are waiting for us, and we wish that through debate you will be having here in the workshop and in the group will be very important. And also you can build upon this debate in order to think about the issue from several dimensions. What are the challenges? What are the inequalities in terms of access? And also, if we continue blindly, we'll be highly dependent on technology, and consequently, we will start decreasing the role of humans in education. And also, we have the issue of quality. And does the digital tool provide us quality as we conceive it or preconceive it? And what is the educational quality, and what is the viability of content, access, etc.? So there are so many issues that we need to deal with. But in the same way, there are so many possible and potential solutions, but we have major ones on which we can focus. And today, as you all know, the whole ecosystem, we are thinking about a new way of education, because up to date there was a certain format of education, a passive education, but today we are living this total transformation. And we need to take into account those transformations. So the first question: what is this new system, and for what education? What type of teacher? What is the new type of the work of the professor or teacher? And the council is working now through a permanent commission on the profession of the teacher and educator that takes into account these novelties. And also we will try to understand how we can use the tools and the new ones, and also we need to transform our mindset. And by the same token, what kind of governance we can deploy, because we have today more information, and also the governance of the system needs to be adapted, and what kind of financing as well, because sometimes although we say today that we equipped our schools, etc., but these equipments will deteriorate over time, and then we need to think about other financing mechanism of this kind of equipment, and also in terms of content, because the content becomes obsolete very quickly for learners. And sometimes adult people would think that their content will stay up to date for 20 or 30 years, but unfortunately this is not the case, and there are constant changes, and there is a fundamental question: how can we assess or evaluate this mechanism, and also how can we evaluate and assess our students? And will we be just holding and organizing exams for schools and universities? And there are so many universities that are opting for multiple choice questions. Is it the best way forward? So we need to include what is technological, but as well the philosophical aspect. Are we doing things the right way? Do we have the best answer for our future and for our future generations? So thank you for your presence, and I'm available for any question. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for this overview on the genesis of this digital transformation in Morocco, and also the scope, your scope towards the future. Now, I will be presenting, I would like to invite Ellen Giol. No, he's the head of UNESCO program for Maghreb for education. Thank you. You have the floor. Thank you very much. Greetings. I'm Lengiel. I'm head of education at the Regional Bureau of UNESCO for Maghreb. We are covering 5 countries from Libya to Mauritania. We are based here in Rabat. At the outset, I would like to thank the chairman or president, Habib Al-Malki, for these kind words, and also the intensity of involvement that we felt through his address. This testifies of the cooperation agreement that we signed in last December with the Higher Council for Education, Training and Scientific Research in order to move forward on mutual interest issues. I would like to thank as well Mr. Aziz Kashwa for the presentation that was very minute, detailed, and relevant, and that is very reassuring as to the relevance to move forward hand in hand with Morocco, because the issue of digital transformation is an issue that has been dealt with for several years in Morocco, and we know all the institutions, the actors and partners who are involved in this transformation, a digital one. And I do think that the council has the right mandate in order to work and treat all the issues that have to do with paradigm shift and that are of utmost importance. As you all know, this workshop that we organize today takes place in a framework that is can be looked at from a different lens. The first one is the agreement of cooperation with the Higher Council. I mentioned it, and also since February last one in 2024, we organized a high meeting in Tunisia in partnership with the Ministry of Education of Tunisia, in which we called upon all the ministerial departments of education in the 5 countries in order to move forward in this regional cooperation with the vector of the follow-up of the 4th SDG and taking into account our theme. And at this occasion, we had several presentations and also to launch a debate on the issue, for example, concerning governance of data. What are the systems of follow-up and the management of education data for the future and all the issues pertaining to the different pillars of digital transformation in the educational system? This high-level meeting in which Morocco was represented allowed us to progress and to set the foundations for a publication that will be launching or publishing tomorrow. This is a regional publication that will set the stage of the maturity of systems in each respective country. And this meeting allowed us to move forward. And I'm mentioning Jenny and Juliette, who highlighted the involvement of UNESCO at the higher level of the education system in favor of the accompanying of Morocco, and also with the other partners of within the framework of this digital collaborative initiative, this operational initiative that targets or aims at gathering, rallying all the stakeholders in the field of education and to bring them in a very constructive spirit and mindset that allowed us to move forward with the member states and to work with them on the priorities that were identified. These 3 prisms that today are being raised in this workshop will allow us to study what's next. My colleague Juliette will be talking to you about the agenda, but beyond this day that will allow us to move forward, we will try to identify a few priorities because we have several, and we will look together what are the next steps. And among all the themes that have been mentioned by Mr. Keshwa, we will see how we can build upon them, and also in the sectors that have particular priorities. And allow me to talk in more details. We have perspective of long life learning, and the council is the right place in the countries in which we work. In Morocco, we were really lucky to have knowledge bases that are acknowledged at the international level, and we are trying to promote those bases and also the UNESCO databases, and it's part of our job to share the best practices. So this perspective of long life learning is to consider this digital transformation in an exception that is quite wide and large, and this brings us to think about how we position ourselves since early childhood up to the adult education, and mentioning vocational training and higher education. There is another point that is equally important: how we can build upon research, because when we are dealing with guiding the public policies, and most importantly, revising and upgrading the training of teachers and professors. And here I'm talking about training professors and teachers. It's very important to do it on the basis of conclusions of the research. So the UNESCO, as you know, has a network of chairs, and around more than 258 chairs around the world, and we have our presence in Morocco. We are trying to widen our grid, our network in Africa, because in Africa there is some kind of shortage in terms of those relations, and we need to widen this network, especially that there are so many projects that are still in the pipeline phase. And why not to have a chair and to have a research project that will be taking care specifically of the digital transformation on education. This is a call. This is a call that we need to take into consideration, for example, to have this partnership chair between several institutions that will allow us to move forward in a very serene way, and to have fruitful discussions. Thank you again for the partners of GDC who will be talking to us today, who will deepen the discussion. This is very important. And I think that this guttering for digital transformation is a retranslation of how the private sector can be associated to the public sector and the public institutions in order to enrich the discussion and debate, and also to better accompany those parties. Today in the morning, the president talked about the financing of the digital transformation in education. This is one of the issues and the items that were regarded as a priority, and this is quite delicate. And today, we tried to get in touch with the Ministry of Finance, and it is very important to get in touch with them in order to have accountants on board and experts of finance on board, and the ministries of and to have issues pertaining to digital transformation in general. Just to wrap up, I'll be saying that, Mr. President, you talked very much about the inclusion, and we appreciate enormously that there is a particular effort that is being made, and by the sign interpreting. This is an embodiment of the importance of the quality of working hand in hand, and to have a real inclusive approach. And even in the conclusions of the report that will be launching tomorrow, we need to ensure access and to have a holistic, inclusive approach that is being used by all the stakeholders in order to enhance the quality of education, to have a hybrid mode in a few instances. We need to find some kind of balance. You mentioned as well the socio-emotional skills, and UNESCO has a recommendation on education for peace, for sustainable development, for human rights that has 14 guidelines, and we need to think about the citizenship issue and what we call in our own term the soft skills that allow us to be that enrich employability, because education is not used only to be having a job position, but also to have a pacific citizens. Thank you very much for these opening remarks, and I'll be wrapping up, and I'll give the floor to Juliette in order to move forward with the presentation of the panel.
Voilà. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks to the Council. Thanks, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, dear Hélène. It's a privilege to be here. I would like to thank the Higher Council for Education. It's a great thank you for giving me the opportunity about the Moroccan experience. I am Juliette Norman Smith. Juliette Norman Smith. I worked with the education department. I'm a specialist in the digital transformation of education UNESCO. In education and for education, not only as UNESCO, as a global partnership, experts collaborating on this topic, the digital transformation. As mentioned, I'm going to address the audience in English and in French. It's a great opportunity to tell you that we have simultaneous interpreting in the room. So if you want to follow the exchanges in French, English, or Arabic, I am very happy to welcome some key members from the DTC in person and live who will help me to address the issue of digital transformation of educations that we have designed together in the discussion framework today. First and foremost, please let me give you the environment. UNESCO is the international institutions in charge of the SDG number 4, inclusive education, as it was highlighted by Helen, from now to 2030. Why are we talking about digital transformation? According to the UNESCO, any kind of exchange about education should take into consideration education, not only about technology. The key takeaway for today is that we need to address 4 issues, 4 items. First and foremost, what are the issues we have to face in the field of education in Morocco and in the world? Secondly, where those challenges are the most serious. Thirdly, how can we use technology to solve those issues? And finally, why do we need technology in the field of education? This last question is the most important. We live in a world where technology is everywhere, covering all the fields of our life. But in the field of education, we need to understand why do we need to use technology in learning and teaching. Indeed, education should prepare the youth to a digital world. However, we need a specific goal to use technology in our schools. Otherwise, our technology will not improve learning and teaching and will not be sustainable.
Using research and producing global thought leadership on digital transformation in education. Some of you will have these publications in your bags that you received today. And ultimately, UNESCO believes in the immense potential of technology to improve education quality and inclusion. And there's no denying that around the world, we need solutions for the learning crisis. These are some statistics that UNESCO frequently cites, and they're important to keep in mind for today. There are over 250 million children out of school in the world. There are over 700 million illiterate people in the world. We need over 44 million teachers to achieve SDG 4 and basic education for primary and secondary education, 44 million teachers. That's over 50 million if we include pre-primary education. An estimate by the World Bank shows that 70% of 10-year-olds in low and middle income countries cannot read a simple text by age 10. And we also know that education needs to support the future workforce, which is changing rapidly, especially in the age of AI. So we have to prepare our young people for this change. And so we need technology to help us address these big problems. But our ambition for equity and inclusion have not yet driven digital transformation globally. So 2.6 billion people are still disconnected. That's 244 more women than men. And UNICEF just released its annual State of the World's Children report and reported that only 26% of people in low-income countries are connected to the internet, compared with over 95% in higher-income countries. This is an equity issue. If we zoom into education, 1 in 4 primary schools globally is without electricity. 50% of lower secondary schools don't have internet, and over 60% of primary schools are disconnected. This is an equity issue. And most countries, as was mentioned, don't have the domestic resources to put technology to use in education where it can be truly transformative. Because we know, unfortunately today, financial resources for education are very short. Lower and middle income countries face a nearly $100 billion financing gap, preventing them from achieving their education goals. So the point is, we have to be smart about how we use technology. We need to prioritize our investments in digital equity in education, and we need to build partnerships and financial models that can make it sustainable. But for this to be a reality, we need to transform our culture of pilot projects into one of education transformation. And so we need to think about the broader system, and this means across public and private sectors. We need collaboration between ministries of education, ministries of communication, ministries of finance, energy, employment. We need regulators to work with industry to create long-term, results-based, sustainable partnerships. We need policymakers to work with academics and research institutions to generate evidence of impact and create an ecosystem for continuous improvement. And most importantly, in my opinion, as I used to be a teacher, we need teachers to be involved in every step of this discussion, to tell us what they need, to tell us what works and what doesn't work. So this type of multi-stakeholder collaboration is hard, but it's necessary, and it's why we're all here today. And this is also why, as was mentioned by Stefania Giannini, our Assistant Director General of Education, the countries of the world met just 2 months ago in September and signed into force this Global Digital Compact, which seeks a future where regional and universal connectivity are a reality, and where technology plays a central role in promoting inclusion and improving education and life in general. And I want to just cite this quote because it says, only by working in collaboration and partnership with all stakeholders, including government, the private sector, civil society, international organizations, and so on, can we realize the digital future we seek. So, one thing that makes this collaboration easier is if we're all speaking the same language. And this is why, over the past 2 years, UNESCO has been leading a group of technology and education experts in the DTC, which comprises many different types of actors, multilateral organizations, international organizations, NGOs, civil society, funds, foundations, private sector, you name it. And of course, each one of those stakeholders comes with their own vocabulary, their own understanding of what digital transformation in education means. So we had to take a step back and agree. What are we talking about when we're talking about digital transformation in education? So this is the framework that was just published in support of the Global Digital Compact. And next slide, here we go. It's 6 pillars, and we're going to use this as the basis of our conversations today. And I believe a paper has been passed around for you to sign up because each group will be discussing 2 of these pillars in detail. I will briefly explain them, and then I'll invite our panelists to come up and give their perspectives. So first, we have coordination and leadership. And coordination and leadership is really the lighthouse of a strategy. It's the vision, it's the governance, it's the legislation, it's the partnerships, it's also the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. This is probably the North Star, we can call it, that should guide a digital transformation journey. Then we have cost and sustainability. You can have a plan, you can have a strategy, but if you don't have a realistic, concrete plan to finance it, you won't get very far with implementing this plan. So in the cost and sustainability, we're looking at the long-term partnerships, the financial models that can sustain a digital transformation strategy at the national level. We're also looking at how do we support the development of a local ecosystem that can then continuously improve. And we're also looking at the question of sustainability. How are we how are we supporting our policymakers and our leaders to understand that there are ways to look at the long term with processes like procurement and ensure that, that circularity is built into our financial models? Then we'll go to connectivity and infrastructure, and my colleagues online, Adela and Zora, will speak a little bit more about this. But connectivity and infrastructure, we've spoken a lot about today. It's the backbone of digital transformation. And we're not just talking about internet access, but we're talking about electricity. We're talking about the devices, the software that's on those devices, the spaces in schools that support those devices. How do we charge them? How do we keep them repaired? And so on. I personally believe, and it's a belief I think the DTC shares, that too often we talk about connectivity without talking about the people. How, if we connect to school, are the teachers and learners going to take advantage of that connectivity for their teaching and learning if they don't have the skills to do so? So this is about the competencies and the skills for the future, but also about the attitudes. We've seen in many countries that one of the main barriers to digital transformation is a lack of open-mindedness, an attitude that doesn't want to try and innovate. So it's also about this culture, creating this culture of openness and of appetite for trying new things with digital technology. We've got content and solutions. This is everything that's sort of user-facing. So this is the learning platforms, the actual technologies, the programs that students are learning, and the importance of them being connected to national curricula, high quality, safe, secure, open and free for students to access, and teachers. And finally, in the center, we have data and evidence. And this has bidirectional arrows for a reason. We need data to know where we are in this process of digital transformation, but we also know that through the process of digital transformation, we will connect more schools, more learners, more teachers, and therefore we will have more information to propel and advance digital transformation in education and make it increasingly based on evidence that we have to support this transformation. So before I invite the speakers up, you may notice that AI, artificial intelligence, is not a pillar itself. This is because in the framework, AI sits within the central data pillar. And this is because you cannot have AI without data, and also because AI will impact the whole system, the ways we govern, the ways we regulate, finance, assess, and train our teachers and learners. But we have to remember that AI is part of this very large and complex digital transformation puzzle that countries at all levels of digital maturity are struggling with right now. We see many countries jumping right into this question of AI without addressing bigger gaps in connectivity and infrastructure that need to form the basis of any productive and ethical use of AI. So let's keep in mind the whole 6 pillars. And finally, we've got the outer layer, and this is the most important part, ensuring that this entire process is directed by education priorities, by principles of safe and ethical practice, and by asking that why in every context. So on that note, I will change back to, I'm going to leave the slide on the screen, and I'll change back to French pour vous présenter nos experts.
Just to introduce our experts, online and in person, Adele Umstade. He's the coordinator of the GIGA project from the ITU, which goal is to connect the schools in the world to internet. We also have Yasmin Esminch, head of the education department in Morocco. We have Marine Raberen, she's the director of education at Lenovo, and Nicolas Albouz, the regional vice president for anthology. Thank you. Let me start with the issue of connectivity. As I said, many countries have to face the digital gap for internet access in schools. Adele, can you tell us something about the connectivity pattern which has been successful within the GIGA project? Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. Sabah al-khair. Good morning. Bonjour. I would like to thank our host, the government of Morocco, as well as the Higher Council for Education, Training and Scientific Research. I'd like to thank the UNESCO. Let me share my screen. Can you see my shared screen? Right. Thanks. Thanks to Hélène, thanks to Juliette for the great presentation. I am Adele Mouchtahin. I am the International Telecommunication Union representative on the Giga initiative. I'm working on connectivity and the modeling for schools. Please let me start by introducing Giga. What is Giga? Giga is the International Telecommunication Union. This is a specialized agency of the United Nations. At Giga, our objective is clear. We want to allow all young people to have access to information, opportunities, and to have the freedom of choice. I heard that Juliette elaborated over the item of equity, and this is something, equity, which is very keen to our heart, and we are working closely with the within the ITU. A sustainable achievement which is keen to our heart. We cannot be efficient and sustainable if we do not embark the ministries of education as well as the private sector and the public sector to embark in this great journey. This is the heart of our strategy to provide a sound and fair impact. Since the launching of Giga, we are active in 34 countries. We are working with governments and partners to increase connectivity and to transform education. Giga has been acknowledged within the Global Compact, especially the first goal of closing the digital gap and to promote a digital economy that will be inclusive. This acknowledgement is a great achievement to praise our efforts that we've been putting forward for the good sake of humanity and education. Today, please bear in mind that near half of the world's 6 million schools are not connected to the internet. We're talking about 6 million people, 6 million schools, sorry. More than 500 million students do not have access to the internet. Over 2.6 billion people estimated to be unconnected. The majority are women and girls, according to the ITU. And non-connected children are more exposed to health risks, identity, gender equity, and education and the ability to access tomorrow's job. This is a challenge and a great opportunity. As far as the DTC is involved, we want to boost the digital and sustainable transformation. The DTC focuses on a holistic digital transformation of education systems, while GIGA provides universal connectivity to schools as the basis of this transformation. GIGA is part of a sustainable connectivity endeavor, and we cannot exploit fully the digital transformation without connectivity, which is a great prerequisite. Please bear in mind that GIGA does not connect schools directly. The main objective is to support governments to help them to design their programs, plans, and designs in order to put forward projects. Adeles, you have 1 more minute left, please. How are we modeling our processes? In this picture, you have the mapping provided by a GIGA. First, we are involved in an infrastructure mapping, data dictionaries, pre-processing, quality checks, and validations. This is the modeling in detail. We also work over the cost calculations, the capital expenditures, and the operating expenses. The cost calculation is utterly important. Secondly, we are involved in proximity coverage visibility and the fiber path mobile capacity. We also work on the fourth steps of our journey about connectivity scenarios, highest bandwidth, blended solutions, and lowest cost. This approach will help each and every schools to leverage on an availability in a very sustainable way. If you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Adele. Thank you for being part of the DTC, because our holistic approach is utterly important. It's true that schools' connectivity or schools' access are or is the entry point to this process. And we know that connectivity investment is not enough to improve learning. Marine, Lenovo is a great provider. What do you think about the need of this holistic framework to put forward a transformation, a much more impactful transformation? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Marine? Marine Raberin, Director of Education at Lenovo for Europe, Middle East, and Africa of the Education Department. I would like to thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to share an experience. My experience following the COVID as the Education Department manager. We had a surge about the digital environment following COVID. New actors in the computing environment have provided a lot of materials and equipments to sustain and to support this transition. Finally, the findings following this crisis has shown that most of the equipments used during COVID have not been used in a sustainable and efficient way. Most of them remains in cupboards, and we didn't have the enough maturity in the education environment, not enough maturity to adopt those technologies. It was a non-sustainable purchase. It was just about addressing a crisis. That's why it is really important to address the deployment of those technologies in a sustainability approach. What does it mean? Different findings we need to have a support in deploying the computing process. Let me share my experience at Lenovo. We think that it is very important to have an efficient deployment. Materials and equipment should be deployed in a sustainable and efficient way. That's about raising awareness of students and pupils, how to take care to maintain the computer's equipment. It's an expensive tool that should be used in a very efficient manner, but this is also to provide a package, a kit. It's not only an equipment, it's about softwares, applications that will be used in an efficient way. It's also to get access to pedagogical resources and to make sure that those equipments are delivered in due time, in due course, during the back-to-school period, at due time and in due course. So this is an overall project. And the second pillar of our approach, it has been elaborated this morning, it's about teachers training. Many teachers and trainers have felt a little bit lost while deploying this computing environment. It has many things to do with artificial intelligence. So we need to make sure that the teachers be accompanied and supported in a very efficient way. Someone has talked about autonomy. Autonomy is utterly important to be able to use in a very autonomous way these computing equipments. We need to make sure that this process is made step by step in a steady manner, first and foremost, starting by the diagnosis stage, the diagnosis phase, the diagnosis, and we need to understand the state of play, the level of maturity of these teachers and pupils. Following this first diagnosis, this first prognosis, we can deploy a training process that will support the teachers in due time and in due course. So, as a matter of conclusion, transformation should be done in a project environment. Your Excellency President and General Secretary, it was great the way you have elaborated over the Jenny project in Morocco. You have embarked in this project. According to my experience, it can be done from a national standpoint or a regional standpoint. And this is up to the countries that should deploy the most relevant way to deploy this kind of process, sometimes with pilot projects. And last but not least, you have echoed a while ago about inclusion stakes, the possible digital gap. And I would like to elaborate over this point. When we talk about digital skills, I would rather talk about a digital capacity and how students are used to the digital environment. It's not only about Facebook, TikTok, or X, those applications. We said that pupils and students are digital literate, have a great digital literacy, but do they really know how to support their development? Are they able to embark in ChatGPT to make some sustainable and relevant research? This is this digital environment that should be taken into consideration. And we need to support the risk management while using the digital environment to make sure that our children use the digital tools in a safe manner while sharing contents, and to make sure that schools could be able to use those equipments in a safely and manner when we're talking about digital security, which impacts mainly and mostly schools. During COVID, we have realized that most of the cybersecurity threats were schools. Thank you, Marine. Thank you, Marine. You are giving us a great flavor about how you design this holistic approach, even though you are a provider, equipment provider, you have a great systemic approach. And it was great. It was great listening to you about inclusion. I was about to ask you a point regarding the inclusion priority. It's a great priority for UNICEF. What do you think about this framework to be sure that no one is left behind in this digital transformation?
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you. Thanks to UNESCO, thank you for giving the opportunity to UNICEF in this great initiative. I'm really happy to be here. I'm so happy to have this exchange with the Higher Council for Education about such a very important topic within the reform of the education system. I think that inclusion is the core of our mission, of our assignment. We as UNICEF, in all our programs and plans in middle-income countries and low-income countries, the main mandate of UNICEF is to address the issue of equity. When we talk about equity, to leave no one behind. We're talking about the most vulnerable communities. We're talking about people living in remote areas, in rural areas, and disabled children, which should be addressed in priority. This framework, this environment, as you said, Juliette, is about having the same narrative, to embark in a holistic approach, not thinking only about infrastructures. The first thing we think about when we think digital, computers, internet, the connectivities, but what about the softwares? What about all the other environment in this transformation? This is something which was addressed in most of the presentations, taking into considerations the different dimensions and the different contents. Your graph was great about this point. When we're talking about inclusion, I think that Hélène underlined that even in Morocco, we think about access. People think that they are good regarding the access environment, 99%. It's true that we had some great achievements in the access environment. The education environment was reformed in a very smart manner. However, we still have access issues in rural and remote areas. The earthquake showed that we had some access issues, access gaps, and when we talk about the availability, when we talk about regions suffering from disasters, I understand that the gap is still quite big. How can we upgrade this issue of accessibility? The digital is a major asset in this process. Everything about platforms. We have this common initiative for governments. The Gateway, this is an online platform enabling to cut the gaps, to work in networks, and to put forward the best practices in the field of accessibility. It's great to have adapted tools with some tailor-made pathways adapted to the specific needs. Once again, this framework helps you to have this quality that can have a great impact to the beneficiaries. So this is a great point about quality. A couple of points. I think that His Excellency, the Secretary General, has raised a very important point. First, mitigating the inequities, the inequalities, thanks to digital transformations, to be able to upgrade very quickly. The resources are free. Online libraries. That's a great opportunity for upgrading. A second point is commitment. We have entered an era when learners are changing their mindset. Having some great pedagogic resources is utterly important, and it makes the learning process much more affordable and much more open. It helps to embark the most vulnerable pupils and students, and it also helps the best students to embark in an autonomous journey as far as the education process is involved. So it's a great way to talk the same language and to have the same environment and experience. It's the right time to talk about data, to know which pupils and students can be involved, which one are dropping out of schools, which schools should need an extra support. Now I would like to give the floor to Nicolas. Nicolas, what do you think about this framework to put the issue of data at the core of the process?
Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting us with so much kindness and for organizing this meeting. Concerning data, we mentioned the considerable efforts that was made in order to ensure the digital transformation with a holistic vision. And here we are talking about content, accompanying, and the faculty and staff. It would be too bad to have all those digital tools without indicators in order to measure how we make progress in this digital transformation. So there is the first point that is fundamental today. Given the volume of learners, we need to have a data strategy in order to measure the progress of digital transformation. I think that Morocco did a fundamental work during the 5 last years, and we see data that is being brought by UNESCO, and we can be just proud of this dynamic. Each action, each investment in digital transformation leads to the generation of data. But what do we mean by data? We need to have data that is viable, of high quality. We have an expression that is being used in IT world that is trash in, trash out, which means if we have bad quality input, we will have bad quality in the output. So this is why we need comparable data. But data is also very sensitive, because data on education is very sensitive, and we have the problem of security of data, and we also have the issue of integration, meaning today I have an experience of more than 15 years of IT education, and I know how digital solutions for education can be deployed. And for each society, we have solutions, but they are compartmentalized, and this poses a problem. We need to cross data from learning management system and the IT system, and this is a real problem, because the relevance of data comes from the integration of several systems of data, and there are so many interesting strategies, data lake, in which we put all data in the same vein, and we need to be able to cross data, and this is at the heart of the issue. And today, when we talk about this specific aspect of data, because we have today systems that produce data, but what we need to do is to have predictive systems. I have a concrete example. I studied the statistics of UNESCO. There was a study by the Ministry of National Education. We have 300,000 learners who drop out of school, and we have more than 50% of dropping out in the middle school in Morocco. And the predictive data allows us to identify these high-risk pupils, which means that there isn't only a human remediation that we will impose, because we will not determine by the digital what are the reasons, but probably the child has difficulties at home or at school. But then we will have a manual remediation, and we have interesting data, and we analyzed one of which in order to identify risk pupils by studying the number of times those pupils check in on grades, and more they are nervous, and more chances that they succeed. And this is just one element of data among hundreds of thousands of data that define dropout. So when we have accurate and precise data that helps us in our work, it becomes very interesting. I will be talking about artificial intelligence, and I'm very delighted that we are not only talking about AI, because in all conferences in which I took part during the last 6 months, they are talking only about AI, and it's too bad, because it is important, we admit that, and we all know that it is here, but we cannot just confine ourselves to this theme. And the reason for which I do think that MIT worked on a project, what is the ethical use of AI in the educational sector, and they have certain rules. The human capital should be always in control, and also the viability of data. When I'm dealing with ChatGPT, there will be correct information, but there will be so many biases. And last but not least, transparency. We are warning students and professors, this information was produced by artificial intelligence. So this transparency contributes to the adoption of those important rules. And the last rule that was mentioned by UNESCO, before moving to something else, there was an issue, a question, AI, was it something that will benefit emerging countries or will benefit mature countries? And the answer that was stipulated, it will serve emerging students in order to have a good quality content through generative AI, and for mature countries, for automating processes, and for professors, we have less professors, and AI can bring an added value in this regard. Thank you very much, Nicolas. And I think that this is a very good transition towards the last pillar, because we need to keep in mind that AI and data are not free. We need to have systems of financing and also financial models that will ensure and cover in a sustainable way the use of AI in education. And we'll come to a close to our small panel with Zohar Hermesh from Ericsson, and we're working together with the DGCE in order to develop a tool that will give us information on the different financial models used for digital transformation in education. I would like to say that the tool is not ready yet, but it will be available next year. So you are the very first group to see part of this tool. Zora, you have the floor. Thank you, Juliette. Can you hear me? Very well, loud and clear. I'll try to share my screen with you just to consolidates my presentation. Thank you again for the invitation. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to be with you in person, but I'm really delighted to present part of my job concerning what we do with all partners with DTC. Through DTC, the partners, as Juliette mentioned, they have developed, or we are developing, a tool that will allow us to draw a mapping of the different financial models beyond the traditional models. We have several financial models that are innovative for sustainable financing through initiatives that we notice in the field of education. The toolkit, as we call it, for financing DTC, it contains 26 models of financing. They are all on the screen. And for each model, it is well described, and I'll be talking about them. We will see them through the three main models that we highlighted and selected. And given the limited time, probably we will delve deeper in the first model, and we will be just mentioning a few aspects of the two others. But what is really important to know is that beyond the information chart on these traditional models, the toolkit has 120 case studies, concrete ones that were implemented in several countries. These cases are connected not only to the 26 models themselves, but also to the parameters and settings that were presented earlier. So now, for example, if we take the first case, the program of social responsibility of businesses that is quite popular, which means that in each one of these 26 models, they are presented the same way. We have the information on the left. For example, in the case of the program of social responsibility of companies, we have information, as you see. We have an introduction. And in this case, what we can say about this format is that the social responsibility of companies is very well appreciated, and this is something that helps businesses and companies to be responsible, socially responsible, and to involve its employees in these efforts. And the other kind of information that we cover in these models, financial models, for example, what are the stakeholders, the key ones that take part to the implementation of these models. In this very particular one, you can see here that we have unions, we have employees, service providers, investors, and the community as a whole. And also it involves governments. And then we go in detail as to how this model works. In the case of social responsibility, it means that we need to raise awareness as to the entity and to include the values of social responsibilities within the business and outside the business. Another aspect that we cover during this model is where does the financing come from in this kind of models. In these kinds of programs, we see that funds usually come from businesses themselves and through the contributions of employees, and also we have donors, and sometimes we have partnerships with other businesses. And the program that I'm managing for Ericsson is a program that is well enshrined in this social responsibility of enterprises. We have educative programs throughout the world. And there is another aspect that is very important, that is omnipresent in all the 26 models. We need to take into account that through the cases that we study, we analyze somehow the issues that these particular models engage. There are a few problems that these models try to solve, but at the same time, we try to compare the viability of these different models according to the context in which they are being implemented. And as you notice here, what I'm presenting is an example of this information file that we submit pertaining to the 26 models that we have here. We have information on the model itself. And then what we do is that we, in this toolkit, we have a certain number of cases, and for each case, for example, the case of social responsibility, we can say that we identified 4 examples, concrete ones that were implemented in certain countries, in quality education in India. I'm sorry if these acronyms were not translated in this presentation, but I'll give you an example where we put in detail the implementation of these cases in certain countries. For example, the mandatory corporate social responsibility in India that touches upon several companies in India. Once again, apologies because I did not translate everything, but concerning the mandatory corporate social responsibility in India, and specifically in this country, the state has implemented a law that imposes on corporates or corporations to contribute with 2% of their profits and to activities or of sustainable development. This allows companies to put aside a certain fund or budget in order to invest in sustainable development, education, health, etc. And as you notice on the screen, what we are trying to give as an example for the presentation today, because time is quite limited, I cannot cover everything, but just to give you an example of the type of information that we collect on the different concrete cases in each country. There is the description of the initiative, and we also try to present the pros and cons and the advantages and drawbacks. So these initiatives, what challenges did they face during their work? And this will allow us to connect to particular cases. For example, in this particular case in India, and also to have the DTC framework along with other information pertaining to the financing models, the 26 financing models. So this case needs to be connected to the others, and especially to the mandatory corporate social responsibility. For the rest of the presentation, I'll be just showing you very quickly a few other examples, just to have an impression, an idea, an overview of the as we hope, to the use of this tool, to this database. Zora, you have 3 minutes left. You have 3 minutes left. So here, I'll not delve deep into details, but I'll be just showing you that, as we said earlier, we have 26 models. And I showed you a case of how we define this program or this financing model. And for the financing model, we have several cases, and I showed you the information that we collected concerning one particular case that we identified in India. For the other models, for example, I'll go down here. The financing, the results-based financing. This is a very popular model that is based on the premise that financing is submitted to the parties that implement the project. So based on those results, the financing is distributed to all those who implemented the project. And what we can say about this particular case is that there is a certain number of important stakeholders who are very important for implementing the project. And how does it work? The government identifies a social problem. Investors suggest projects in order to address this problem, and also, if you wish, there is some kind of selection that is being done in order to choose the service providers, and then there will be an independent assessor or evaluator in order to measure the results. The complexity that we face in this kind of projects, for example, when we need to identify the measures, assessment or evaluation measures, because the payment is conditioned by this assessment or evaluation. This is another concrete example of the model. We have cases here. We wanted to present the case of Educate Girls Development Impact Bond in India, but I'll be just skimming it. So this toolkit is in the finalizing phase. It will be available for the public and the government very soon. And the last case that we wanted to present is the exchange of debt. This is a model that is being scaled up. We have bilateral agreements with the governments when debts are being debts bonds are exchanged against the investment in sustainable developments, like investment in the education sector. And you have an example here in terms of the type of the key stakeholders who are being involved in these initiatives. We have different models in order to implement these bond exchanges and debt exchanges, bilateral and commercial ones. And just to end up, there is a very particular complexity in this kind of model. The complexity of transactions, and also of the assessment of the implementation on the field, and also the budgetary rigidity of certain countries. I will not cover all the details, but here, I'm sorry, you can see and observe, probably this is the last slide for this presentation. You can see here the exchanges that were held between the GC and GPE debt and Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and also between Spain and Salvador, Peru and Spain, and France and Cameroon, just to give you an idea about how these efforts are being implemented on the field. But I think that I need to wrap up. And the idea is to give you an idea about the structure of this model. And all the details will be shared with you once the toolkit will be available. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zoa, and thank you to all the speakers. A round of applause to all the panelists. And also, it's high time to take a coffee break, as you all know. Today, concerning details on each pillar, you'll have the opportunity in the next session to delve deeper in details with the groups. You will have 2 pillars to study with a questionnaire bearing on the framework that we presented. Since we're a bit running late, we will go back and at 11:50, and so we'll take 15 minutes and we will be explaining the structure of the next session. Thank you very much.
Switch. Présentation.
Avant de commencer la prochaine session, je vous
So before starting the next session, I'm inviting you to join menti.com to start with this exercise. Mentimeter. We'll start by gathering opinions, given the discussions of these morning. In what pillar Morocco is most advanced? I'll give you some time in order to menti.com, and then you access menti.com, and then you include this number, this code, 567192006. In what pillar Morocco is the most advanced?
On attend les réponses.
While waiting for the answers. Very good. Connectivity and infrastructure. And then we'll see later after this session the presentations in the plenary if your opinion changed or not. Content and solutions, very interesting. If you are not always connected, you just go to menti.com and then include this code, this number on the screen, 567192006. So many opinions on connectivity and infrastructure. This is very interesting. I'll give you 30 more seconds. So no vote on capacity and culture, cost and sustainability. This is very interesting. So you have 5 seconds to go, and then I'll move forward. In what pillar Morocco is facing most challenges? Connectivity and infrastructure. It's advanced, but it is facing so many challenges. A very good mix. Coordination and leadership. Very interesting. Cost and sustainability, capacity and culture. So it is different from the other question. Now we'll keep these answers and we'll go back to them in the second session after lunch. But here I will stop in this regard to give you the structure of the next session. We will have an hour before us, maybe less than what was expected, to discuss the strong points and the challenges, and we'll break down in 3 groups, and each group will have 2 pillars to explore in detail. And here we are very delighted to have the moderators who were here in the plenary, in the panel with me, and with the co-moderators of the council who will be managing the conversation on these 3 themes. First one, coordination and leadership, cost and sustainability. Second, capacity, culture, content and solutions. Third, connectivity and infrastructure, data and evidence. And the questions that will guide those discussions are as follows. By using the questionnaire, and you will have so many copies of these questionnaires, you will be talking about them at the level of each group in order to identify the advantages and the drawbacks, and also to have a discussion on what has already been done in order to face those challenges in Morocco and what kind of benchmarking or international comparison to be used. And for this very particular point, I will count on the perspective of the DTC team members, and you will need to choose a rapporteur at the very beginning that will be making a presentation after the lunch. We changed the agenda after lunch. We will have 3 presentations from rapporteurs. We will have between 5 and 7 minutes in order to present the 3 strong points and the 3 weaknesses. I hope that everything was said and clear, loud and clear, and I'll invite Hisham to explain to us where we'll be breaking down, where we are going right now. Thank you very much. Following the choice of the participants, 3 groups were formed. The first group concerning coordination, leadership, cost and sustainability will be in room 22, and just nearby when you leave the room on the left. And second one has to do with capacity, culture, content and solutions will be working in the meeting room and will guide you. And the third group on connectivity, infrastructure and data and evidence, it will be of the permanent commission or committee in this floor. We can go right now.